The solitary Miltha wrench slipped from Marcus Chen's oil-stained fingers, clattering against the metal deck plates of Deep Space Station Omega-7. He cursed under his breath, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. The engineering bay hummed with the constant thrum of life support systems, a mechanical heartbeat that had been his only companion for the past 3 years. Marcus glanced at the chronometer mounted on the bulkhead. 1,200 hours. Lunchtime, not. That time meant much out here on the rim, where the nearest star was just a distant pinprick of light and the mining. Asteroids drifted like sleeping giants in the eternal darkness. But routine was everything when you were the only human left on a station, built for 300. He walked to his makeshift dining area, a collection of storage crates arranged around a small heating unit in the corner of the engineering section. The rest of the station's massive dining hall remained sealed, too painful to visit since the accident. Since the day the mining shuttle Endeavour exploded during a routine extraction, taking with it everyone Marcus had ever shared a meal with. The survival rations heated with a soft beep, synthetic protein with vegetable substitute, the same meal he'd eaten for the past 1,095 days. Marcus settled onto his usual crate, the one that gave him the best view of the main engineering console, and unwrapped his lunch with practiced efficiency. The silence pressed against him like a physical weight. He'd tried playing music, leaving comm channels open to the distant chatter of trade ships, but somehow the quiet always crept back in. The station was too big, too empty, too full of echoes from voices that would never speak again. Marcus had just taken his first bite when the proximity alarm chimed softly. He looked up, frowning. The automated systems should have logged any approaching vessels. He set down his meal and moved to the sensor station, his trained fingers dancing across the holographic interface. A small craft was approaching from the asteroid field, moving with the careful precision of someone who knew. These dangerous corridors, well, the ship's configuration was unfamiliar, sleek and angular with energy signatures that didn't match any known human design. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. In 3 years, no one had come to Omega-7. The station was officially listed as abandoned, a casualty of the mining disaster that corporate had been eager to forget. The comm system crackled to life. Deep Space Station, Omega-7. This is salvage vessel Wanderer requesting docking permission. The voice was female, accented with something Marcus couldn't place. Not quite human intonation, but close enough to be unsettling. Marcus hesitated. Protocol demanded he verify credentials, run security checks, contact the nearest colonial authority outpost. But the nearest outpost was 6 weeks away by standard drive, and he hadn't spoken to another living being in over a year. The last supply drone had been delayed, and he'd begun to wonder if anyone remembered he was still out here. Wanderer, this is Station Engineer Chen. Docking Bay 3 is available. Be advised, this station is operating on minimal crew. Minimal was generous. He was the crew. 20 minutes later, Marcus watched through the observation port as the mysterious vessel settled into the docking cradle with barely a vibration. The ship was even stranger up close, its hull seeming to shimmer with an oily iridescence that hurt to look at directly. No registration numbers were visible, and the airlock bore symbols that looked more carved than manufactured. The docking tube sealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Marcus waited, his hand resting on the emergency lockdown controls. After 3 years of solitude, his social instincts had atrophied. How did you greet a stranger? What did you say to someone when you'd almost forgotten how to have a conversation? The inner airlock cycled open, and a figure stepped through. She was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with pale skin that seemed to hold an inner luminescence. Her hair was silver white, pulled back in a practical braid, and her eyes were the deep blue-black of space itself. She wore a form-fitting suit that looked like it had been grown rather than sewn, and moved with a fluid grace that spoke of low gravity. Adaptation. "Engineer Chen," she said, offering what might have been a smile. "Thank you for the docking clearance. I'm Zara." Marcus found his voice after a moment. "Just Marcus is fine. I wasn't expecting visitors. This station has been ... quiet for a while." Gaze swept the empty corridors visible through the airlock. "So I gathered the energy signature suggested minimal life support. You've been alone here for some time." It wasn't a question, but Marcus nodded anyway. 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. The precision of his answer surprised him. He hadn't realized he'd been counting so carefully. "That's a long time too." "Carry a burden alone," Zara said softly. There was something in her voice, a depth of understanding that made Marcus look at her more carefully. Her features were human, but there was something else there, something that whispered of vast distances and ancient knowledge. "You said you were salvage," Marcus said, changing the subject. "There's nothing worth salvaging here. The mining operation was shut down after the accident." Zara tilted her head slightly. "I'm not here for the mining equipment. I'm tracking something that passed through this system recently. My sensors indicated it might have left traces on your long-range detection grid." Marcus gestured toward the engineering bay. "You're welcome to check the logs. Most of the station's systems are still functional." He paused, then added awkwardly, "I was just having lunch. You're welcome to join me. The food isn't much, but..." "I would like that," Zara said immediately. "It's been a long journey, and I can't remember the last time I shared a meal with someone." They walked back to Marcus's improvised dining area, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Marcus heated another ration pack, suddenly self-conscious about his primitive setup. But Zara settled onto one of the crates as if it were the finest chair in the galaxy, accepting the simple meal with genuine gratitude. "How long have you been out here?" Marcus asked as they ate. "I mean, traveling, doing salvage work." Zara was quiet for a long moment. "Longer than you might believe. My people... We don't age the same way humans do. We're adapted for long journeys between the stars. Your people..." She met his eyes steadily. "I'm not entirely human, Marcus. My ancestors were, but that was many generations ago. We've changed, evolved for life in the void between worlds." Marcus felt he should be shocked, but somehow he wasn't. There had always been rumors of lost colonies, of human populations that had adapted to extreme environments in ways that pushed the boundaries of what humanity could become. And there was something about Zara, a quality that spoke of vast spaces and patient time. "What are you looking for out here?" he asked. Zara set down her utensils carefully. "Something dangerous. Something that was lost a long time ago and has recently begun moving again. The traces I'm following suggest it passed through this system within the last few months." Marcus frowned. "I would have detected any ship that size. The long-range sensors cover everything within 2 light of the station." "Not a ship," Zara said. "Something older. Something that doesn't follow the usual rules of space travel." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the station's alert system came alive with a cascade of warning tones. Emergency lights bathed the engineering bay in pulsing red as automated voices announced proximity alerts and unknown contacts. Marcus leaped to his feet, rushing to the sensor console. The display showed something impossible, a massive energy signature appearing from nowhere, as if space itself had torn open to reveal something vast and ancient drifting toward them. "That's not possible," Marcus breathed, his fingers flying over the controls. Nothing that size could approach without being detected. The mass alone should have triggered every sensor in the system. Zara appeared beside him, her face grim. "It's not following normal physics. The object I've been tracking, it exists partially outside our reality. That's what makes it so dangerous." The sensor readings clarified as whatever was approaching moved closer to their dimension. It was a ship, but unlike anything in Marcus's experience. Kilometers long, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. The energy readings were off the charts, fluctuating in patterns that suggested technology far beyond human understanding. "What is that thing?" Marcus demanded. Zara's hands moved over her own portable scanner, and her expression grew increasingly troubled. "It's a threshold ship, a relic from a civilization that learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality. They were wiped out millions of years ago, but their ships, sometimes drift back into normal space, still carrying their original programming." "What kind of programming?" "The kind that can rewrite the laws of physics in a localized area, transform matter at the quantum level. The ship we're looking at could turn this entire system into something unrecognizable, something that follows completely different natural laws." Marcus stared at the sensor display, watching as the impossible ship continued its approach toward Deep Space Station Omega-7. The readings showed it would reach them in less than 6 hours. "Can we run?" he asked. Zara shook her head. "My ship is fast, but that thing isn't bound by normal space-time limitations. We can't outrun it." She turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that might have been hope. "But we might be able to stop it." "How?" "Threshold ships respond to specific energy patterns, frequencies that can put them back into dormant mode. The problem is generating those frequencies requires a combination of technologies that shouldn't exist in the same place." She gestured around the engineering bay. "But you have a full mining station's worth of industrial equipment, and I have knowledge of how the ancient technology works." Marcus looked around at the familiar machinery, the systems he'd maintained and modified for 3 years. "You're talking about jury-rigging alien technology with human mining equipment?" "I'm talking about the one thing humans do better than any species I've ever encountered," Zara said with something that might have been admiration. "I'm talking about making the impossible work through sheer bloody-minded determination." For the first time in 3 years, Marcus Chen smiled. It felt strange on his face, like a forgotten muscle memory returning to life. "Well, when you put it that way, let's get to work." As alarms continued to sound throughout the empty station, Marcus and Zara began their desperate preparation. In the depths of space, something ancient and terrible was approaching, carrying the power to remake reality itself. But standing against it was something the ancients had never encountered: human ingenuity backed by alien wisdom, and a friendship forged in the crucible of shared purpose. The battle for Deep Space Station Omega-7, and perhaps the fate of human space, was about to begin. Secrets of the Void. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Marcus had never worked so intensively, his hands moving with practiced precision as he modified the station's power grid according to Zara's specifications. The alien woman seemed to know exactly which systems could be pushed beyond their limits. and which modifications would create the harmonic frequencies they needed. Increase the plasma flow to the tertiary generators by 15%, Zara called out from beneath the main console, where she was installing components from her ship that looked like crystalline flowers grown from pure energy. The resonance cascade won't form properly without sufficient power backing. Marcus adjusted the controls, watching as energy readings climbed into the red zone. These systems weren't designed to handle this kind of load. If we push them too hard, we'll lose life support. If we don't push them hard enough, life support won't matter, Zara replied grimly. She emerged from the console access, her silver hair now streaked with grease and her luminescent skin dim with exhaustion. The threshold ship is already beginning to affect local space-time. Look at your chronometers. Marcus glanced at the time displays and felt his blood chill. The different clocks throughout the station were showing different times, some running fast, others slow, as if time itself was becoming unstable in the presence of the approaching vessel. "How much longer do we have?" he asked, returning to his work on the waveguide assembly. Zara consulted her scanner. 2 hours until it reaches effective range. After that, reality becomes ... negotiable. Marcus had seen impossible things in his years maintaining deep space equipment, but this was beyond anything in his experience. Yet somehow, working alongside Zara, it felt manageable. Her knowledge of the ancient technology, combined with his understanding of human engineering, was creating something neither could have achieved alone. "Tell me about your people," Marcus said as they worked. "The ones who adapted for deep space travel." Zara was quiet for a moment, her hands never stopping their delicate calibration of the harmonic resonators. "We call ourselves the Guardians, though that's a human translation of a concept that doesn't really exist in your language. We're descendants of a human colony ship that was lost in the void between galaxies about 3,000 years ago." "Lost how?" "They encountered something like what's approaching us now. A reality-warping artifact from a dead civilization. Most of the colonists died, but some survived by ... changing, adapting. The artifact didn't just kill, it offered a choice: die as human or live as something more." Marcus paused in his work. "And you chose to become guardians. My ancestors chose to become protectors. We developed longer lifespans, enhanced senses, and an intuitive understanding of how these ancient technologies work. In return, we dedicated ourselves to finding and containing artifacts that could threaten younger civilizations, like humans." Zara smiled, and this time it reached her strange, beautiful eyes. "Especially like humans. Your species has a gift for adaptation that exceeds even our own. You find ways to survive in situations that should be impossible, and you do it through pure creativity and determination." The station shuddered suddenly, a deep vibration that seemed to come from the fabric of space itself. Emergency began wailing as reality distortions rippled through the hull. Marcus watched in fascination and terror as the metal walls seemed to flow like liquid for a moment before snapping back to their normal state. "It's starting," Zara said urgently. "The threshold ship is beginning to impose its reality matrix. On local space, we need to activate the harmonic disruption field now, before the distortions become too severe." Marcus ran to the main control station, his fingers flying over interfaces he'd modified beyond recognition. The power levels were climbing toward critical, but the harmonic generators were finally coming online. Energy patterns that had never existed in human space began to propagate through the station's hull, creating frequencies that existed partially outside normal physics. "It's not working," Marcus said. watching as the approaching ship continued its inexorable advance. The harmonics are generating, but they're not having any effect on the target. Zara joined him at the controls, her face grim. The ship's defenses are more sophisticated than I hoped. It's adapting to our frequencies, changing its resonance patterns to neutralize our efforts. Another reality wave swept through the station, and this time Marcus watched his own hands briefly turn translucent, as if he were becoming a ghost. The sensation was nauseating, like feeling himself exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. There has to be something else we can do, Marcus said desperately. Some other approach. Zara stared at the sensor readings, her enhanced mind processing possibilities at superhuman speed. There is one option, but it's extremely dangerous, and it requires a level of trust that... She stopped, looking at Marcus with an expression. He couldn't read. What kind of trust? The harmonic disruption isn't working because we're fighting the ship's adaptive systems. But if we could synchronize our frequencies with it instead of opposing them, we might be able to infiltrate its control matrices from within. Marcus frowned. That sounds like connecting our systems directly to an alien computer that can rewrite reality. That's exactly what it is. And if we do it wrong, the ship could assimilate our entire station, turning us into part of its reality matrix. We would cease to exist as separate entities. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the observation ports, Marcus could see space itself beginning to distort. Stars shifting position as the fundamental constants of physics fluctuated under the influence of the threshold ship. What do you need me to do? Marcus asked. Zara looked at him with something like wonder. You're willing to risk everything based on the word of someone you met 6 hours ago. You're willing to risk your life to protect people you've never met, Marcus replied. That's good enough for me. Zara smiled, and for the first time since her arrival, she looked truly human. This is what I meant about your species. You make decisions based on hope rather than calculation. It should be a weakness, but somehow it's your greatest strength. Working together, they began the delicate process of synchronizing their systems with the alien technology. It required Marcus to route the station's entire power grid through Zara's crystalline components, creating a hybrid system that was part human engineering and part guardian intuition. On my mark, Zara said, her hands poised over the activation controls. Remember, once we're connected, I'll be navigating the ship's consciousness directly. Your job is to maintain the power, flow, and keep our systems stable while I search for the shutdown protocols. What if something goes wrong? Then we hope human stubbornness is stronger than alien programming. Marcus found himself grinning, despite the gravity of their situation. I can work with those odds. Mark, Zara said, and activated the connection. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus felt his consciousness expand, touching something vast and ancient and utterly inhuman. Through the connection, he could sense the threshold ship's purpose: to seek out worlds with developing civilizations and remake them according to patterns established millions of years ago. It was not malevolent, merely following its programming with mechanical precision, but alongside the alien presence. Marcus could feel Zara's mind, bright and determined and surprisingly familiar. Through their shared connection, he experienced her memories, lifetimes of wandering between stars, countless encounters with dangerous artifacts, the weight of responsibility for protecting species that would never know she existed. I found it, Zara's voice echoed in his mind. The shutdown sequence, but it requires a specific command authorization, something that mimics the original civilization's neural patterns. Marcus felt her attempting to interface with the ancient protocols, but something was resisting her efforts. The ship's defenses recognized her as alien, different from its creators. "It's not working," she said aloud, strain evident in her voice. "My mind isn't compatible with their command structure." But Marcus, through their connection, could sense something else. The ship's neural patterns weren't entirely alien. They were based on organic consciousness, and consciousness was something humans understood better than any species in the galaxy. "Let me try," Marcus said. "You don't have the training, the genetic modifications, ... I don't need them, I just need to think like they did." Marcus reached out through the connection, not trying to overpower the alien systems, but to understand them. He approached the shutdown protocols not as an engineer trying to fix a machine, but as one conscious being attempting to communicate with another. The ship's consciousness was vast and patient, operating on timescales that spanned geological epochs, but at its core, Marcus recognized something familiar: the desire to preserve, to protect, to ensure that something of value would survive. The ancient civilization had programmed their ships not just to spread their influence, but to safeguard their legacy. "I understand," Marcus whispered, and sent the authorization codes not as commands, but as a gentle request from one guardian to another. The response was immediate. The threshold ship's reality distortions began to fade, its massive form slowly phasing back out of normal space-time. The emergency alarms fell silent, and the oppressive weight of alien presence lifted from Marcus's mind. "It worked," Zara breathed, staring at the sensor displays that showed empty space where the impossible ship had been moments before. "You actually communicated with it." Marcus slumped in his chair, exhausted by the mental effort. "It wasn't trying to destroy anything. It was trying to preserve its creator's vision of how the universe should be. I just ... asked it to preserve something else instead." Zara looked at him with an expression that mixed admiration and something deeper. "In all my years as a guardian, I've never seen anything like that. Most species try to fight these artifacts with force or technology. Only humans would think to negotiate with one." The station's systems began returning to normal as Marcus powered down their improvised modifications. The familiar hum of life support and environmental controls seemed almost musical after the silence of impending doom. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. "Do you move on to track down the next dangerous artifact?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, stowing her crystalline components with careful precision. "That was my plan. It's what I've done for the past 2 centuries. But..." She paused, looking around the engineering bay that had been Marcus's prison and was now the site of their victory. "I've never had a partner before, someone who understood both the technology and the responsibility." Marcus felt something warm unfold in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in 3 years. The station could use a permanent science officer. "The pay isn't much, but the lunch conversation is apparently excellent." Zara laughed, a sound like distant music. "I accept your offer, Engineer Chen, though I should warn you, Guardian cuisine is significantly more interesting than human rations." As they worked together to restore the station's systems to normal operation, Marcus realized that his long isolation was finally over. He would never again eat alone in the engineering bay of Deep Space Station Omega-7. The stars outside seemed brighter somehow, full of possibility and wonder rather than cold emptiness in the depths of space. Other ancient artifacts still drifted between the stars, carrying their own dangers and mysteries. But now they would face a new kind of guardian, human ingenuity partnered with alien wisdom, stubborn hope backed by patient knowledge, and friendship forged in the crucible of shared purpose. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in years, Marcus Chen was no longer facing it alone.